Mhm. Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We just connected like a week and a half ago. Well, we've been connected, but reconnected about having you on the show. So I really love that you're here and you made it happen so quickly because you have a newborn at home and a three and a
I,
half year old.
I do. I do. I have I guess he's 7 weeks old now, which is crazy. It goes so fast.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So I would love for you to tell our listeners what you're up to right now. And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to right now.
Sure. So I wear many hats, but primarily my focus is on working with pre and postnatal women in fitness. So
Mhm.
not I'm not a fat loss coach or a weight loss coach, but typically I work with women to sort of understand their pre and postnatal bodies,
Mhm.
to figure out what they need to keep themselves safe if they want to exercise during pregnancy, and then
Mhm.
how to recover safely postpartum. And I got into it thinking it would be just a fitness thing. But I've realized over the years that it's so much more than just exercise. There's so much stigma, and I'm sure we'll get into it, about being a postpartum woman. And I think oftentimes I've become a little bit more of a support system and a therapist in some ways, rather
Mhm.
than just and an advocate for your body rather than just a physical trainer.
Ooh, I just got goosebumps because I was thinking really hard around advocate, like you are absolutely
Mm-hmm.
advocating. And I remember my postpartum going like, how come how come this isn't bigger? How come there's no like, hey, like let's help your body not get back to what it was, but like let it be strong and make space for the changes that have absolutely happened, you know? So I absolutely love everything that you're doing.
Thank
Um,
you.
so before we jump into a lot of those pieces, you're on the show all about redefining and aligning back to, who we are. So I'd love to hear from you what redefining motherhood means to you.
Oh, whew, that's a good one. Yeah. So for me, I never really grew up wanting to be a mom. That wasn't something that I really identified with. And
Mhm.
for me, when I had my daughter, I felt like I really lost myself. I had identified as an athlete. I had identified as a person that, was very fit. And for me, I felt like that was lost because I felt like I had to be this version of motherhood that other people expected of me or that I thought was expected of me,
Right.
but that wasn't really a natural fit for me.
Hmm.
So I think for redefining motherhood, it's really just about finding what pieces of your pie that make you whole. And I
Hmm.
know that motherhood is sort of one piece of my pie that makes me me, and it's not all of it, and
That's
that's
right.
okay. And I think
Yeah.
landing there took me some time, but once I did land there, it was very freeing. And so really that's sort of what try to help other women to do as well.
I love it all. I love it all. Like I can relate so much to that. So much of those pieces. I definitely did not grow up thinking that motherhood was going to be my journey. I was like, I
Mhm.
have cats. Here they are.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Dogs. It was
Like,
dogs for
yeah.
me.
Yeah. I was like, these are your fur babies. Enjoy,
Yeah.
mom. And then after a lot of deep work, I was like, oh, like I think this could be something, and it was something. And I've been in this journey of deep work for 7 years, and then Hannah came along, and I was like, oh, who am I? What is happening? Where, like, what is this world? And it really connected back to feeling really disconnected. And I think identity is such an important piece, and really opening up what identity means for each and every one of us has that foundation for liberation and for freedom.
Hmm.
And really breaking free of the expectation of what everybody thinks motherhood should be, and actually talking about what it is, which is why I like to have these conversations with moms.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, a lot of women don't talk about it. And I think I love that you talk about it because
Mhm.
I work with a lot of women from a fitness perspective, and
Mhm.
people come to see me because there's something that they're not happy about with their body or whatever it may be. But often that's rooted in that sort of sense of losing themselves
Mhm.
physically, which presents itself in so many other ways too.
Yeah. So, when you say yes, 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 yes to all of that, when you work in this community, I'll call it a sisterhood
Sure.
right, this community of women who are focused on bringing their bodies back, and with intentional focus, intentional movement, and really tuning in, what have you seen has been the biggest benefit from that community?
I think the biggest thing is, a sense of sharing. So whenever you work with me, I will be very open with you about the things that I went through physically. So,
Mm,
postpartum, I liken it to sort of being injured, right? You've had a baby that is a pretty major physical event, whether you had a C-section or a vaginal delivery. However it
mhm,
went, you still grew a
mhm,
baby, you still have to honor that. And I think that there's this sense that if you don't immediately return to where you were before, that somehow you have failed.
right.
And I think for me, when I work with women, I try to be very open about my own experience, which for some people could be deemed a failure. For me, by no means it is. But I think the biggest sense of community is just feeling okay with whatever it is that's happening with
Mm,
your body, and knowing that you're not alone. Whether
mhm,
it could be something embarrassing, like you may be experiencing incontinence, or you may have a really weak core and things may look different than what you're used to, or you
mhm.
may be having painful sex, and things like that aren't openly talked about.
No,
And giving women the ability to talk about it, and to feel okay about it, and to find the resources to help them with it,
right.
is really, really powerful.
Yeah. Got goosebumps over here. Yes, yes. Yeah, I remember going back to my OB at the 6 week mark, and I've had lots of conversations. One with Karen Hicks on our podcast, talking
Oh,
about how
I love
this.
Karen.
Right, me too. And Dr. Danielle Watson too. She's so awesome. Having lots of great conversations with her. And Karen talked about how, like, at the 6 week mark, it was like, okay, now you can have sex. So now everything is normal. And just that whole link to, like, well, if you can have sex now, everything should be normal. And it's like, yeah, but what if I'm not? Like, what if I'm not? And what happens there? So I thought that was a really interesting connection in terms of, like, well, now you're ready. So the only indicator you need to know that you're ready to go back to life is that you can have sex now. It's like, well, I feel like there's so much more going on there. And I remember going back
Yes.
and my OB, and I was like saying to her, because I had a C-section, and I said, so what do I do with all this? Like, what's this? This is swollen, right? And she's like, no. I was like, no, but like, what happens now? And she's like, oh, that's what everyone gets. You just get this pouch and that's what you have now. And I was like, oh, but I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that. And then I was just like so
Wow.
shocked, and there was no space. Granted, she's a loving, beautiful person. It's not
Sure.
her fault by any means, but there was no space built into it to be like, yeah, I know it sucks, right? Like that you went in with a body and now you're coming out, and it's all different and it
Hmm.
feels completely numb. And she was like, yeah, you just have to exercise and eat well. And that was all I got. And I was like, well, isn't there more? Like, this is my third surgery on my abdomen. Like, there has to be
Yeah.
more. And so the last 2 years I've spent a lot of time breaking into that and getting reconnected to it. But it is quite an interesting, uh, just how much the body isn't really the focus for a woman afterwards. That it's the baby. It's all baby, which is great, but mama too.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that sort of upsets me the most about the way that women are supported or not supported throughout pregnancy and postpartum. I think especially if you have an obstetrician, and this is by no means me knocking obstetricians at all, but in my experience and in talking with women, that experience is very baby focused. It's not very mom focused. On the
Mm-hmm.
contrary, the women that I've worked with that have midwife care, that seems to be a little bit more mom focused at times. I can't speak from experience because I had OBs for both of my children,
Mm-hmm.
but this sort of 6 week healing concept is pretty damning, I think, because
Mm-hmm.
you get cleared to either have sex or you get cleared to exercise with no
Right.
restrictions.
Right.
And it's sort of like, okay, well, now I can go right back to doing whatever it was that I did before, and I'm going to listen to my body because that's what I am told, but I don't really know what I'm listening for.
Right.
And there's just because you feel like you're ready doesn't mean that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what people need to understand, especially when it relates to fitness and recovery, is the 6 week marker. When you get that clearance, it's really just like, it's not a green light.
Mm-mm.
It's 6 weeks. Okay, now you can begin the process
Mm.
of rebuilding and healing in an intentional way.
Yeah.
Right? Those first 6 weeks, there's some things that you can do, starting to breathe properly and engage the right muscle groups and that sort of thing. But really, that's 6 weeks of essentially resting.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get that clearance, it's really about, okay, now I can start to heal, not now I can go back to doing exactly what I was doing before.
Right.
And that's where issues start to come up. And I had that experience because I didn't
Okay.
have the information 3.5 years ago. So that was very much my experience with my daughter, also Hannah.
That's right. I completely forgot we were offline, and you said that, and I was like, oh my God, yes, we both have a Hannah.
Yeah, we do.
We both have a Hannah. I love that. So would you be open to sharing your experience? Because I find a lot of women that I have on this show, they have experienced some level of pain, some level of like awakening that has led them into their purpose, which is seen through a passion project or their business or their purpose and their mission on what they're here for. So I'd love to hear kind of if you're open to sharing your journey on that.
Yeah, totally. So as a bit of background, I own a CrossFit gym. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later on, but own a gym at the time, 3.5 years ago, owned a gym, did CrossFit. I grew up playing sports. I was a competitive swimmer. I was a triathlete. I competed in age group world championships as a triathlete. So really identified quite a bit as an athlete. That was part of what made me me. And during my pregnancy, was told by my OB that I could do CrossFit until my water breaks. I asked specifically, is there anything I need to change? And I was told, no, just listen to your body. You're not going to hurt yourself, or you're not going to hurt the baby. You might hurt yourself, but don't worry too much. You'll be okay. So, okay, great. So I did that. I modified a couple of things as I started to exercise where my belly would get in the way, but there wasn't a lot of super intentional changes that I made to my workouts. And that's fine. I just sort of went through it and worked out, and it was what it was. So then I had my daughter, got my 6 weeks clearance, and then went back to exercising because that's what I was told I could do. I was definitely not as fit as I was before having my baby, but really just returned and listened, sort of went to see what my body was capable of. Again, not really participating or not really changing anything, just doing what I could do, whatever that meant. So then I sort of started to have, around that 6 week mark, I started to pee my pants all the time. So it would be like throughout the day, I would go through 3 or 4 pairs of pants, and my husband would just know that I, needed to bring some more underwear with me or another pair of pants or whatever it may be. And started to, at a certain point, was like, this is ridiculous. This can't be normal.
Right.
And I had women before I got pregnant, or during my pregnancy, saying, oh, well, just wait till you have kids. You're going to be peeing forever, whatever it may be. You're always going to need to pee. That's just what happens. So in my mind, I was like, well, this is just what happens. So it took me a while to start being like, no, this can't possibly be what happens. So I did a little bit of research, and I found a pelvic floor physical therapist, or physiotherapist, depending on where you're listening from. Physiotherapist here in Canada, physical therapist in the States, but found one. Long story short, found out that I had both the diastasis recti, which is a separation of my abdomen. It's actually a stretching of the linea alba if we're getting super technical, but for the purposes of this conversation, just stretching of the abdomen, and it hadn't healed properly. And then I had 2 pelvic organ prolapses, which was causing all of this accidental urination that I was experiencing. So essentially 2 injuries related to postpartum. So a pelvic floor injury and a little bit of a core injury. The pelvic floor injury is not something I will ever be able to reverse. It is something that I can manage. And my abdominal injury is healed, and I went through this pregnancy, and it's fine. So, so that's fine. But I, sort of through my own experience, I'm thinking, I own a gym. I work in fitness. How is it that I recognize that I'm not supporting pre and postnatal women the way that I should be as a gym owner. And I definitely didn't support myself. So I sort of sought out to be who I needed at the time and didn't have for other people.
Yes. And it's so needed. Like, it is so needed. It is so needed. And I think it's interesting, the language around injury, because if like, how many women, this is a conversation I was having with Danielle on our podcast, Dr. Danielle Watson, when she was talking about like just this idea of resting, and how many women go for so long with just going, oh, it's just my normal. And it's like, well, but what if we looked at it and we actually put women's bodies like forward, and like saw them as like super important within the health industry, as like, this is something that is completely transformational on a mind, body, spiritual way. And there's nothing wrong, but there's some things that we can do to support this and have recovery the same way an athlete would injure their foot. The love and care that goes into that, the same thing needs to go into the uterus and the womb and the pelvic floor. I did pelvic floor therapy before Hannah arrived. I mean, I had a C-section, so I was like, I probably should have started right at the beginning, but I didn't really know about it until then. But it's just interesting, all the things we don't know. But I feel like I don't want to use the word should, but it would be so much more of a benefit to know about that, to just support ourselves in so many ways, rather than feeling embarrassed or like we did something wrong because something is happening with our bodies, you know?
Yeah. And the challenge for women is that unless you know to ask about those specific things, nobody will tell you.
Right.
So I intentionally went through, I had a new obstetrician this time around. I'm not going to tell you who it is because it doesn't matter. They're lovely.
Yeah.
But sort of went into it kind of wanting to audit the process and just knowing what I know. I have a wonderful pelvic floor physiotherapist who I really leaned on during this pregnancy with Miles, my son. So I was supported because I knew where to look.
Right.
But I went through it with my OB just to sort of see, okay, are you going to tell me anything about my pelvic floor? You know, I have a prolapse, so I communicated that. But really at no point was my pelvic floor discussed with me. I had my 6-week clearance just last week. I didn't even have an internal exam, which was very, very, very upsetting for me. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have heard me rant about that for a little while. And so there's nothing, you haven't done anything wrong if you find yourself in a position where all of a sudden you're healing some things you didn't expect, or if your body's doing things that you didn't expect it to, because unless you have somebody telling you to go, or someone has told you, there's nobody that will.
Right.
And that's where the breakdown exists. And fortunately, people like Danielle and like myself are starting to have these conversations a little bit more and trying to get them out there. But it's still, you know, in the grand scheme of people that are having babies versus the number of practitioners that are trying to educate and help is a huge disparity.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge gap. And I think that's that stigma when you talk about like, you knew, so you asked and you got the resources. But if you don't know, which most of us don't know because we didn't learn it in school and there's no class to take, and there's just this incredible, what's the word I want to use? There's this incredible expectation on the OB to just tell us everything. And that's really not their role. And nor should it be. It shouldn't be one person's position to tell us everything, but it's just kind of like how in the office, they have how to help your child learn how to read and how to help your child do this and all of these things. It's like, why isn't all of that plastered with like all of the other resources for a mom's body and for this incredible transformation that a woman is going to go through? Where's that?
And that's just not just now, you know. I think more and more women are into athleticism now. And sure, we're starting to see a little bit more of some of these issues come up. But I talked to women that had babies 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, that are still dealing with accidental incontinence or painful sex or weak cores, back pain, all of these things that can be related back to not rebuilding properly after having a baby, that have never heard of a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Don't know what their pelvic floor is, let alone that they have one. And all of these things, right? It's not taught, and it should be part of the process of whether you're going with your family doctor or your OB or whoever is delivering. There needs to be it doesn't have to take much. It can literally just be, Nicole, make sure you go see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. that's all it needs to be. And then the pelvic floor physiotherapist can handle all of that for you. But yeah, it's not good.
No, I've talked with a lot of women, and it's that we're noticing that gap, and we're going, okay, so where can we, put in the resources? How can we fill that gap? And there's a lot of women right now. It's not so much doula, it's not social work, it's not therapy, but there's this like postnatal worker, and I don't know what the name is for it yet, because it's to me, it's very new. And I think that would be, it's almost like a social worker for after body care. It's like, social workers, in my opinions, as a former social worker, it's having the resources and knowing who to connect with, and knowing, like what the source is, and then saying, okay, this is what you need, this is what you need, and this is what you need. I feel like we all deserve that after, I call it that initiation into parenthood. It's like, can someone help me here? Like, what is going on? I was not expecting a lot of that stuff. We had a doula because I didn't qualify for a midwife, and she was phenomenal. Again, there's just so many pieces. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. And I hope that if someone out there is listening and they go, oh, like maybe this isn't what I should have, or I don't want to have this, or if just something isn't sitting right, that they do go seek or message you for questions, I'm sure, because you have that community.
Yeah, and a lot of those things sort of feel embarrassing, and I was embarrassed about them at first, right? Totally. I was like, I have to hide the fact that I sneeze and I pee my pants. I pick up my child and I pee my pants. These are things that, obviously I wasn't super proud of, because, I'm the time 30 years old. This shouldn't be happening. But I've realized and learned over the last few years of working with, frankly, hundreds of women, that if I don't share, who's going to? And I'm totally okay with it. It is what it is. I have learned to manage it. I can still do all of the things, or could do. I will work back to it. But all the things, I was able to return to athleticism in the way that made me feel whole completely after my daughter. None of that stuff went away. Some things were a little different, but I was able to sort of fill my cup up again with sport by healing myself properly.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So on that note, I will share, you created and had a community and a CrossFit gym, and, leading your passion and your purpose and helping hundreds of women in this movement. And, here we are in 2020, in a global pandemic, and things have completely changed.
Yeah.
So how about you share with us where you're at with that? Because I have a feeling that passion is still there, and integrating all of these new changes. And so, how is all of that going for you?
Yeah, so I will, in 2016, my husband and I bought a CrossFit gym in the same town that we connected in. And in January of this year, the gym was doing great. And we sort of decided that it was time to have another child, because we finally, after 4 years of pouring absolutely everything that we had into this business, I was finally in a place that we could pay for enough for staff to coach all of the classes for a period of time, and take over my personal training clients temporarily, and all of that stuff. And then March 15th, 2020 happened. And we got shut down for 4 months, due to COVID. And we reopened at the end of July, and really just at no point were able to recover. So we had to make the very, very difficult decision recently to close our gym permanently on the 18th of December. So I'm not sure when this is going to go live, but that will be our last day. So as of today, that's, I think, 14 days away, 2 weeks away from being permanently closed. So that's a huge, took a lot of work for me to get to a place where that felt okay. To even be able to, well, it doesn't feel okay, but it feels okay for me internally. Even to get to a place to speak about it without crying feels like a win.
It does.
But so that's going to be a big change for me upcoming, for sure.
There are so many things that I want to say about that. First, I will say, thank you for sharing, and for, sharing that piece of your story, because you're in it right now. Right. You're in it. It's not like this is 5 months later or a year later, you know, you are in it. And I think that it's really important to talk about how COVID has impacted so many of us in so many different ways. Neither one is better or worse. Like they're all were being impacted. And for this to come to where it has been after all of that planning, because I, as a business owner too, you think about the future and you go, okay, so what needs to happen in order for me to step away? And for really making that decision, this is an incredibly difficult place to be in. And so I just thank you for sharing that, because I know you're not alone in the community of, you know, fitness and small, not even small business. I don't even like saying that small business word, but businesses, right? Who are so important within the community, and especially within the community of, you know, mothers. So I'm just really grateful that you felt safe enough to share that on here, and I will support you in any way that I can, and in the future, and where this is going. What are your plans for the community and for the moms, and what you have been doing? Has that been something that you guys have talked about?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just to back up just a little bit, I think, you know, the challenge as a mom myself is this sort of decision had to come down to, you know, am I going to be a mother? Am I going to take care of my 6-week-old child, or am I going to run my business? And you know, the only feasible way that we could have stayed open is for me to leave my infant and go back to a place where I'm coaching, you know, more. And we just, that's an impossible choice, but there's only one choice, you know. And I think, you know, the support has been amazing. And as heartbreaking as it is, you know, I feel like I'm abandoning people, which is really difficult. But fortunately, this climate has opened up the opportunity, or opened up people's minds to the idea of working out at home. And prior to COVID, fortunately, I had sort of identified that I was able to engage with the women in my community, so the women in Bradford. I worked with hundreds of women in Bradford that came through my gym and did my in-person classes. But prior to COVID, I had hired a business coach to try to figure out how I could reach more women outside of just Bradford. So
that's great.
I actually created a 12-week postnatal course that I do as a group course. I'm not running it right now. My intention is to run it, to start it again in January, sort of mid to end of January. We'll see where my heart is at that portion. So I'm going to continue to do that, to work with women online, especially because, you know, bringing a baby into a gym environment right now, I think there's people have some uncertainty about that. So I'm hoping to use that. I'd also like to be able to offer virtual classes and do some of that stuff online too. But I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I work with women one-on-one online, and I have done for the past well, how long has it been since COVID? Past 10 months. I've run 2 rounds of my 12-week program, and I've been able to work with women that way, which has been amazing.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
And then, my intention is to hopefully offer some live virtual classes as well. Just trying to now figure out what that all looks like, because now I'm at home with my 2 children, and how do I do that? So it's definitely a big pivot. I know that I'm not alone. As it relates to mothers, especially of young children, needing to make major changes to the way that they experience their career, which is a whole other COVID complication that feels entirely unfair. But, you know, I'm curious and optimistic about what the future looks like, for sure.
You have so much strength. And I just think right there, like that curiosity and the optimism is exactly, you know, why we need you, right? Why we need you to be in this space. Of course, taking the space for yourself to integrate and, you know, try to kind of process everything that is going on, mixed with like the political issues, the sexist issues, you know, like it's not fair, but then like you said, it is the only choice, you know, it's like, it's an impossible choice, but of course, you know, you have chosen your family. And there's just a lot of emotions that are wrapped up in that. And I just really admire your strength and your I don't know if this is going to make sense, but just your alignment. Like if you're listening on the podcast, you won't be able to see it, but if you're watching the video, just your alignment energy is just very, solid. And so I really, really appreciate you sharing, because these are the stories that we don't hear about on a regular basis. We're not hearing the impact, the secondary impact of what COVID has happened and what it's doing in the community. And especially as women and as mothers, that community has been essential. And that is one thing that we are all missing. We all talk about that village that we need to raise a family. And it just feels like that's the one thing that was cut right away.
Yeah, totally. And, I may seem poised at the moment. I have done a fair amount of feeling misaligned on it, but, I've done a lot of self-work myself, and was able to release myself of this feeling of failure relatively quickly. I am a very proud person. I've worked very hard on my business. I was very proud of my business. Where we were in March 2020, before, we had a big annual event on March 8th where we had, 50, 60 people in our gym, which for us is a lot. It's not a very big gym.
Right.
This big community feel-good event, and the gym was thriving and everything was going amazing. And then it was just like, that was it. And I really felt optimism when we opened in July, knowing that we needed to be at a certain place in terms of membership in order to sustain it by December. And we just were nowhere close. And, I'm not sure. I've played all the angles in my head, what could I have done? What could we have changed? And sort of came down to, I don't think anything. And I can feel okay with that, knowing that so much of it is out of my control. And I never got to have time with my daughter because we had the gym when I had her, in terms of having a mat leave and really leaning into being a mother. This time around with my son, it doesn't feel like such a big change because I already was a mother. You sort of have that initial step into motherhood where you're like, for me, it was, who's Laura? How do I fit into this role as mother? I don't know what that is. Whereas this time around, it's like, no, I know very clearly what that is. And it's okay. It feels okay for me to lean into that, knowing that I gave my business everything that I had. And that I'm a very resilient person, that I will be just fine.
Yes, you will. Whew. So
Did I
many
get
emotions. You got me. You got me.
Not on purpose. Not intentionally.
Not intentionally. Yeah. There's just a lot of acceptance, and you can tell, like, here's the thing. This is what I talk about all the time with clients in our community, is like, we as humans are allowed to feel joy and gratitude and, feel secure, and also feel like really angry and really sad and really emotional. And what is important, I think, this, if I may, this message is that we are allowed to have both, this duality of feeling super proud and super grateful for everything that has happened, and yet feeling really sad that it's over. And that it's okay, and that no matter what, we're going to be okay. And I think the messaging for so long in the mental health and the emotional world has been, you just got to be happy. And that's not true, because you can't actually withstand happiness for like 24/7.
No.
And so to hear that you have been doing your work and releasing your emotions and moving through that process, like, I do want to I'm coming back to that, because I don't think we talk, not you and I, but I don't think we as society talk enough about the process that you've potentially been in to be able to make this decision and feel really secure in it. It's not like it was just like it happened overnight for you, Yes, you are strong and standing here, and you're in your power right now. But it is so important to acknowledge that you didn't get here just by, not dealing with it, if that makes sense.
No, not at all. I think, the one piece for me that still feels really difficult, and will probably feel really difficult for some time, is that my son will not have the benefit of being in the gym and being in that community, because my daughter loves it. She loves it there. She thrives in there. She is an extremely social kid. She will talk to anybody. She'd go into the gym before COVID, obviously. If she was ever there after class, she was the first one running around high-fiving everybody, and talks about going to the gym and wanting to see all of her friends. And the fact that Miles isn't going to have that makes me deeply sad. But that's the one piece that I'm sure I'll have trouble letting go for some time.
Yeah.
But we have really beautiful memories of being in there with our daughter, and watching her thrive, and the community accepting her and watching her sort of come alive. And I credit a lot of why she is so loving and warm and social to having been there in that environment. So that's the one piece that'll take some time for me, I'm sure. But yeah, it's
such a special memory too, right? I have a few friends who right after maybe they were cleared, I don't know, it was a few years ago, they were doing your program at your gym, and they would bring their kids and they would work out, and I was like, that's amazing, I want to move to Bradford. But I know, like, I don't know firsthand, I'll say secondhand, of just how incredible the space was and the space you provided for moms and their children. And so, I just want to thank you for being here today and for opening up and for sharing. I would love to have you back because I think you're awesome.
Thank you.
And I guess the one thing that I will ask, I will shift it a little bit, but if there's anything that you would go back and want to tell yourself in March or even in January, after everything you know now, if you were to go back and tell yourself then, or even your younger self, what would you tell her?
Well, that's a good one. Let me think about that one. I know what I would tell myself 3.5 years ago with my daughter, for sure. The biggest one is that maybe I tell myself the same thing now. It's just that you have nothing to prove. And I think, I felt that sort of mindset after Hannah, and feeling like, I need to get back to where I was to prove that I'm this, and I think, saying that out loud now, I think would be another thing that would be very helpful for me then, because this fear of failure was so loud for me even before COVID. And I think if COVID taught me anything, it's that, like, you sometimes just have to release what you need to release. And I tried so hard, we did virtual videos. People didn't know I was pregnant when the gym closed. So we did like a video every single day with the workout to try to keep our members engaged. And we would do it from our garage. Right. And sometimes I would do it alone because my husband is a shift worker. Right. And oftentimes I would, get through it. I would turn off the camera and then I would be sick on the floor. Wow. Because I'm, dealing with morning sickness. And when I sort of step back and process, like, not only did I pour everything that I had emotionally, mentally into it, also physically in many ways. And I think, I don't have anything to prove to anybody. And as I sit here now feeling like, my business is closed, or I'm closing my business, and that, what will people think? But it doesn't, I don't have nothing. It doesn't. You can think what you want. I don't have anything. I don't have anything to prove to you, to anybody, right? And all that really matters are the people that are in this house that I live with, and myself, and my marriage, and my relationship with my children. Those are the things that really matter the most. So I think, saying that you have nothing to prove, then I still have nothing to prove. So that's what I would tell myself.
Whew, all the goosebumps right now. Yes. Absolutely, 100%. And I just hope that everyone hears that so loud. Oh, getting me so emotional in this. Because I think too, anything to have learned in COVID times is, like, the most important people are, like, that's what matters. And enriching and nurturing those relationships are what matter. And you matter. And everything that you have accomplished, and everything that you have decided has all happened for you, although I'm sure sometimes it doesn't feel that way.
That's where my curiosity comes from, because deep down I know that. So what is it,
Show me
what it is. I'm ready. I'm ready to see it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's coming, right? And I really am so, so, so grateful for you to be here today, for sharing this. There's just so much grace and energy around this. And it's important to have these conversations. And I'm just really grateful for you to be here today and to share that. I thank you. I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I'm thinking of all you guys as you enjoy this time,
Yeah.
with Miles and Joy. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, follow along, follow your journey, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best way is on Instagram.
Okay,
I'm just laura.j.sinclair on Instagram. If
cool.
you want to email me, you can. My email's not going away. My business is my physical gym's going away, but my email will still be there. It's
Cool,
just laura@bradfordstrength.com.
cool.
You can email me that way. I'm always happy to chat. If you have questions about really anything related to anything we talked about, if I don't have the answer, I can refer you to somebody that does.
Yes, yes, yes. That's what community is for. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful. I would love to have you back in the new year when there's
Sure.
time. Would love it. And just thank you so much, love.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.